to share some information today that hopefully will stimulate you. It may shock you. It may be controversial. It may not. But what I ultimately want to do is to offer you some alternatives, alternative ways of thinking, alternative structures, alternatives to how you approach the future. But even more importantly, how you can navigate your way through this new economy, how you can be a winner. Because see, there's clearly winners and losers in our economy. Would you agree? Yeah. And that's been true all through history. As a matter of fact, it's probably worth taking a look at history and seeing how wealth has been created through history, how it's created today, and how it's going to be created in the future. That will give you some information, give you some options, new ways to approach life, new ways to map out your future and how you want to live the rest of your life. So, big subject and big doings in the world right now. Is anybody concerned? Are you at all concerned about your economic future? Are you concerned about the way that you're going to live for the next 5, 10, 20, maybe 30, 40, or 50 years? I know if you're like me, you're thinking, gosh, this doesn't look like it did for my parents' life. It certainly doesn't look like my grandparents' life, and I don't know too much more than that, but I suspect that it's going to look very different even going forward. And if you're thinking that, well, I hope that you can take some encouragement from some of the trends that are happening, but also I want to warn you of some of the pitfalls, some of the things that could really catch you up and leave you as a loser in the new economy. So let's look at this thing called wealth, because wealth creation is the heart of what I'd like to share with you. And first of all, I just want to distinguish money and wealth. So being rich, that's certainly good. Most people would agree. Being wealthy is probably better, and having money, of course, is the basis. But let's take this apart, this word wealth, because one of my mentors taught me early on, he said, if you judge a person's wealth simply by the amount of money they have, you're missing the biggest part of what makes them a wealthy person. Now, I had to think about that. I had to say to myself, what can he mean? Because I had the two conflated. I had money and wealth, and that was it. If you had a lot of money, you're wealthy. But what I've come to learn is that wealth is much more. For a whole human being, wealth certainly includes money, if you're wealthy, but doesn't it also include health? To be truly wealthy in all its fullness. And what I mean by that is, probably like all of us, I've had periods in my life where I haven't felt 100%. I've felt either under the weather or sometimes incapacitated, and all the money in the world didn't help because I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't feeling good about life. So I think we can all agree that having good health, and perhaps even radiant health, would be an important component of being wealthy. Let's look at this thing called time. See, I know a lot of people that have a lot of money, but you know what? They're time poor. They actually don't own their life. Their wealth creation or their money, in a way, owns them. Now, wouldn't that be the ultimate sort of irony or the ultimate joke on us if we spent a lot of time getting a lot of money and then we found we were victims of that money or slaves to our money? Wow, that doesn't sound like freedom. That doesn't sound like true wealth. So time, I think we can all agree, time is important. Having time for yourself, for your family, your community, time to do the things that you want to do in life. Yeah? Let's look at this thing called relationships. Again, wouldn't it be a cruel joke to accumulate lots and lots of money and nobody likes you, nobody loves you, you don't like people, you don't love people? You might be one of these people who builds a big castle and you just hide out in the castle. Now, I'm not putting that in a bad frame if that's what you truly want. But I know for me, I want powerful, dynamic relationships. I want love in my life. I want the respect and the admiration of people that I respect and admire. Ultimately, true wealth, I believe, includes powerful relationships. And I want to add another component, and that is destiny or spiritual purpose or passion, right? So I know people who have created a lot of money, but they haven't exactly done it in a way that they enjoyed. Okay, now, there's ways to do it and ways to not do it. But wouldn't it be the ultimate to do what you love, make a lot of money, have a lot of time, have great relationships, have radiant health, and then call yourself truly wealthy? To me, that's the ultimate. That's true wealth. So I want to distinguish wealth from just having money. And money is an important part of it. Okay? So let's look at this thing called wealth and how it's been created through the ages. And I want to start back, way, way, way back, and take you through a very fast sweep of time. So we can start maybe 20, 25,000 years ago, the last ice age. So ice covered most of the world and it receded. And what happened after that was people, wherever they were hiding out, suddenly appeared. And, we don't know because there's no written records. The whole earth was sort of scraped clean for the most part. And so we can intelligently deduce what happened. And so the agreed historical record is that 20,000 to 10,000 to 5,000 years ago, the main source of wealth creation was being young, fast, and having a spear, or in some cases, a band, tribe. So it was kind of hunter-gatherer or pillage and plunder. All right, so 5,000 years ago, so that's how wealth was created. 5,000 years ago, people figured out how to domesticate animals, they figured out how to grow things, and wealth was created through the land. Suddenly you could create wealth by having a piece of land and farming it, right? Now the pillagers and plunders didn't go away, they're still there, but during that transition, not everybody who could run fast could actually grow things. That's a sophisticated thing, right? So there were winners and losers with this new strategy. But the new strategy was better because the new economy was better because you could make it through the year. You had an assured protein source. You could actually thrive. And you could have bigger communities and families, right? And the animals and harness that. Fast forward now 5,000 years. I'm going to take us right up to this thing called the Industrial Revolution, which is like 1700s. Let's just say 1750 to 1850. That's when we figured out how to harness the natural sources of power like water and steam. And suddenly we could have these things called machines. And suddenly we had these things called factories. And wealth then became created through factories or making things. Now this is interesting because we went from, 10,000 years to 5,000 to about 300 years ago, right? And these things called factories created enormous amounts of wealth. See, before you could grow things, but you were limited by the amount of acreage or the amount of fish you could, how much you could do was the limit of your physical labor. Suddenly, factories harnessed machines and created unimaginable wealth. As a matter of fact, we still call some of these people the robber barons, which is, not a great term, but they created enormous wealth, okay? Now I want to fast forward again. I want to go from the Industrial Revolution to what's called the Second Industrial Revolution or the service economy, which was around the 1950s. Okay, so these periods are getting a lot shorter. Now there were winners and losers when we made the transition from agriculture to factories. And we kept agriculture, right? It didn't go away. We still got to grow stuff to eat, but less and less people and different strategies, different degrees of wealth. But in the 1950s, enormous wealth was created through service, working on things, right? So you went from gathering things to growing things to making things to working on things. Now I want to fast forward again 30 or 40 years to the 1980s. The 1980s, we moved into a knowledge economy. Wealth was now created by knowing things. Big shift. Now here's the thing. You can't go from hunting and gathering, then just drop right into agriculture, and you can't just drop into a factory, and you can't just drop into a service economy or drop into knowledge economy. Winners and losers. And I want to fast forward now to today. We are in another economic period. And wealth is created differently today than it has in any of those other periods. And there are definitely winners and losers in today's economy. Wealth is unimaginably huge. We no longer use millionaire, we use billionaire, and I dare say there are people on the planet who are trillionaires, right? They don't show up in the Forbes 500 list because they probably pay to keep their names out of there. But make no mistake, there are some very, very, very wealthy people on the planet. Now here's what I want to ask you. If you believe that there are winners and losers in these different periods, and they had different strategies, would it be valuable for you to understand how wealth is being created today and how it will be created in the future? And even more importantly, how you can apply this in your life, how you can take a piece of the strategy and create for yourself, wealth for yourself, your family, your community, and the world at large. If you think that that's valuable information, well, I've got some things to share with you. But first, I want to actually look at some of the challenges we're having today. Okay? So wealth today is unimaginably large. Let me ask you a question. Name for me a company that didn't even exist 20 years ago, right? The owners are very young, probably under 40. For some of you, that may not be too young, but they're younger than me, and they are multi-billionaires. And here's the thing. They don't grow anything. They don't make anything. They don't work on anything. They don't service anything. And what they do is so radically different that if I had told my grandfather how I intend to get wealthy is using this strategy, he would have laughed at me. If I told my father that, he'd probably think I needed some more education or whatever. So what would that company be? Name it. Somebody said Facebook. Facebook, Google, right? Maybe Amazon. You can look at these companies that are huge impact on the human race. And the thing is, when you look at Facebook and you look at Amazon, again, they don't make anything, grow anything. What they do, the essence of their strategy is they give away stuff for free. They give you valuable stuff for free. And you might have used it today several times. You might use it every day. How much do they charge you for that? Nothing. But they have figured out a way to monetize giving away stuff for free. Valuable stuff, not just any stuff. Other people's stuff, valuable stuff. Now, suppose I talked to my grandfather and I said, okay, Granddad, what would be the strategy for me having a great life? Financially comfortable, time, relationships, and all the picture of wealth. He would probably give me advice like this. He would say, go to school, get a great education, get a job, work for that company for a long time, advance in the ranks, and then you'll retire into your golden years. Now that strategy would have worked for him. It did work for him. And my father probably had a similar strategy. But I want to ask you this. If a young person approached you today and said, what would be the strategy for wealth creation today? And you said to them, get an education, get a job, and really work for that company and retire, would you feel totally good about that? And would that person look at you like, boy, are you out of touch? Because people don't just have 4 or 5 jobs. They're now having 4 or 5 careers in their professional life. So that strategy clearly doesn't work. And no disrespect, but anybody that's using that strategy here forward, now look, I don't have anything against a job or an education. But if we as a group are using that strategy to try to survive, much less thrive in this new economy, there's going to be a lot of fallout. There's going to be a lot of people that don't make it. There'll be a lot of losers versus winners in the new economy. So it's time to radically shift our thinking. It's time to first of all, I'd love to give you a picture of how this works and some ideas for vehicles and strategies, but it's time to start to reorient ourselves, if not for ourselves, but for our children, our grandchildren perhaps, our friends, our community, to actually understand how wealth is being created today and prepare ourselves for yet another shift. Yet another shift. And these shifts are coming faster. So this wealth creation is a dynamic thing. It's not just a static target. And for young people listening to this message, you may experience several more shifts in how wealth's created in your lifetime. And hopefully we'll all be around to help participate in that. So let's look at this strategy that some of these new multi-billionaires are using. Like I said earlier, they're giving away valuable information, other people's information, for free. And you're probably using it. Now, I want to just stop for a second, because this is something people have done since humans have been around. Let's go back to that pillage and plunder, hunter-gatherer time. If I found a good hunting ground, did I keep it to myself? Well, maybe. But generally, I would tell my family and my friends, hey, there's good hunting over here, right? That's what we do. We share good things with our friends. We also tell them about the bad things in our life, don't we? A good friend will share that information. Now, that's kind of what these new multi-billionaires are doing, but they figured out a way to monetize it. They figured out a way to make it pay. That's the main difference. And I would submit that you're already doing this in your life. I mean, I happen to like Thai food. Great. Somebody tells me about a Thai restaurant, thank you. But are they able to monetize that? Let's say you tell me about a great Thai restaurant that just opened. I go there, I have a great experience. Maybe I spend a lot of money. The next time you come in, do they say thank you or do they offer you anything? Probably not. So there's no practical way for you to monetize that. However, there are vehicles that will allow you to do this today, okay? So they figured out a way to monetize it. And let's just put that on pause for a minute, and we'll come back to this. But I want to talk about the economic climate today, outside of that strategy. So I mentioned earlier, one strategy would have been get an education, get a job, graduate, go through the job, get seniority, and hopefully retire to the golden years. Now, any of you that are in your golden years, you might know that the golden years don't necessarily look so golden if you're, first of all, worn out, and you don't have the money to enjoy it, and it could look actually like the sunset instead of a great time in your life. And do you really want to defer, you younger people, do you want to defer your life until you're 60 or whenever they retire you? Probably not. But what about if you got retired involuntarily early? What about that? How would that feel? You're working, you got the job, and then you don't have a job. You're underemployed, misemployed, you're outsized, right-sized, downsized. You're fired. You're fired. What would that feel like? How would that be for you? Probably not so good. Especially if you've got maybe a mortgage or a car payment or a family, or you like eating, or any of those other things that go along with having money. Yeah? That can be pretty disruptive. But let's look at how it's working today. I don't know if you look at these economic things, I don't expect you do, but I just want to share some stunning things with you. First of all, this thing called the unemployment rate. Now, there's an official unemployment rate, okay? But that's like saying, how's the weather? Oh, the weather's great. It doesn't really accurately measure anything that you can use in your life. Here's some interesting things. They have changed the way they measure unemployment. It used to be unemployment was, well, we got this group of people and this percentage of them aren't working, and they can work. Now, infants and elderly people don't work, so they cut those out, but they say this percentage of people aren't working. And they say, well, 3 to 5% is structural unemployment, they call it, because this person's changing jobs or this person's taking a sabbatical, and that's okay. This percentage is okay. And that's considered good. Now, the thing is, those numbers today don't accurately represent what you think they do. This is just the truth. Do your own research. Don't take my word for it. But there's huge unemployment or underemployment specifically in targeted groups. And what I mean by that is young people, older people, full-time middle-class paying jobs, okay? So what they include in unemployment today, in employment, is if you work a couple of hours a week at a fast food restaurant, you're in the employed category. I don't know if you can live on that, but probably not. But they can put the headline employment as, oh yeah, it's great, everything's great. Take a look for yourself. Here's the shocking bit. They're covering it up for a reason. It's not just a political reason, re-elect me because things are great. It's because the economy is shifting, and of course the way they measure employment has shifted along with that, because they're having to pay benefits and tax people in certain ways. And those benefits are often geared toward the inflation rate and the unemployment rate. Now, I don't want to confuse you with lots of economic stuff. That's not my message tonight. But I want to establish with you, there is a problem. There's a very real problem. And the problem looks like this. The economy's shifting. If you had a job and you no longer have a job, you may not be able to work in that job again. or you may have to work for a lot less money or under unfavorable conditions, or even worse, if you're a person who has gotten an expensive education and you're expecting a job when you get out to pay down that debt, perhaps, then good luck. A lot of the employment that was sold, so to speak, for this education is either shrinking radically or completely disappearing. Now, why would I say that? That's a pretty radical thing to say. I'm not here to take down governments or that's not the point. The point is to give you some information, check it out for yourself and see if it's true. Here's what I know, and probably every single one of us has used a robot recently or been automated. Let me give you some examples. So used to be when you go to the bank, what happened? Well, there was this whole line of people, of row tellers and managers. And how many of you have used an ATM recently? How many of you have used a bank teller recently? Like a lot less, right? Because you're using, and I'm going to use this word loosely, you're using a robot. You're using an automated machine that has replaced jobs. Bank job used to be a pretty good job. You could have lifetime employment. You could go to school, get the job, get seniority, and retire. But if you're working in that industry today, I strongly urge you to take a hard look at your future possibilities, because it's more and more and more expensive to have a human being doing what a machine can do. Right? That's just one example. I'll give you some more examples. How many of you, my first job was pumping gas, petrol, at a gas station. There must be some place that still does that today, but today it's a machine, right? How about when you go to the supermarket to buy stuff? Any of you seen those real fast lanes where they have 6 or 8 scanners and you just walk up, you put your stuff on, it goes in the basket, and off you go? They have human beings, but are they getting more or less human beings? Less, clearly. What about education? What about this great icon called education? How effective is it for you to get your body to a place along with 100 or 200 or whatever number of people in a room so somebody can talk to you, and then you get your body back to where you were, and you do that several times a day or a week, versus go online, get world-class education at a fraction of the cost, and you can pause it and fast forward it and review it, and it's just a richer experience in some ways, right? Are you getting the idea that we're moving toward more automation? Look, I just dropped my wife at the airport today, right? Any of you that have ever flown? It used to be this line of people behind counters, and they had costumes on, and it was all fun. But today, when you go in there, what happens? Here's a bunch of machines, and you go and you do most of it in a machine, and there's a person there taking your bag, pretty much, right? And they don't even need a person to take your bag, do they? I mean, I don't know why they have that person, whatever reason. The point is that this is not your grandfather's economy, and we are not going back that way. We're not going to go back that way. Automation is eating the world. Software is eating the world. And you may go, what is Michael Jude talking about, eating the world? Well, I didn't invent that phrase. There's a guy named Mark Anderson who is a serial entrepreneur and a venture capitalist, very, very wise person. He said software is eating the world. When I first saw that, I said, what is he talking about? But then I got it. Because in my business career, many moons ago, I had a secretary. I had a secretary to the secretary. I had, all these people working for me. Today, I can do more work with my handheld, computer than I could do with all those people. It's faster, it's cleaner, it's more efficient, and those days will never come back again. So software and machines are eating the world. That's what he meant. That's what he meant. Let me give you another example. Let's say you want to get a blood test, right? You want to figure out what's going on for either just wellness or sickness or whatever. What do you have to do today? Well, first you probably have to go to a doctor. They have to write you a prescription. They refer you to a specialist. You got to go there. You got to wait. You got to fill out a bunch of forms. You're waiting and waiting and waiting. And somebody comes in and takes your blood, and then you go home, and then they're going to send it off somewhere, and then you got to come back and get the results. And it's this whole thing, right? It's a whole big deal. Well, there are these things called smartphones, and increasingly there are devices you wear that monitor your heart, your blood, and a huge array of other things that are coming very quickly, real time. Why would you settle for a snapshot of your blood when you can watch it all day, all week, all year, the rest of your life? And the data is instantly sent to an expert, maybe in the Philippines or India, who is highly trained, who will just tell you what you need to know. You see what's happening to the world? And this thing called the middle class, which is the sacred cow of Western democracies, Western economies, the middle class. Why is the middle class such a huge thing? Because a middle class person, my dad, one man, had a job, one job. He had a car, he had a house, he had a family of 5 children, and we did okay. Now try that today, because he wasn't, an executive. He was, he did not have an advanced degree or anything like that. But today, isn't it true that there's 2 people working and we're struggling? Isn't it true that we're more and more debt piling up? We become slaves to that debt slaves. Now, I'm not saying everybody's in this boat, but most people are. Yeah. What would happen if you suddenly couldn't work? So I'm trying to give you some information so you can get ahead of that curve, so you can actually get in front of this trend and be a winner in this new economy, right? And please, if this resonates with you, spread the word. Tell people about it. Information's the first step. I'm not expecting you to run out of here and go change your life radically. I mean, if you do and you have something to instruct, do, that's fine. But knowing what's coming can be helpful. Knowing what's coming can be helpful. So let's look at this thing called automation. And let's look at some of the trends that are happening. First of all, what does it take to create wealth? Well, we talked about hunter-gatherers, pillage and plunder. We talked about farms, factories, service, knowledge, and then today's information age. This is the information economy. And again, it's not the final evolution of humanity. There's a whole big leap happening right now. But to this thing called a job, which we all hold as important, right? That didn't exist forever. Job's a new invention. Did you realize that? You ever stop to think about, wow, when did this thing called a job come around? Well, it largely came around during the Industrial Revolution, you see, and that's when our modern education system started to serve this job market. So the job is a relatively new invention, and it will probably not last for most of us the rest of human history. The job is going away. The job as we know it is going away. So if you're training, if you're giving a young person advice, go get an education, get a job, and retire, you want to think about this. The job as we know it is largely disappearing. This thing called automation. So if you want to hire me to work for you, not me, but a person like me, I'm unemployable, by the way. If you wanted to hire somebody like me to work for you, you would have to put up with, guess what? If I get sick, I'm not showing up. If I want a holiday, I'm not showing up. If I have a challenge in my life, that becomes your problem because I'm not performing at peak. If I get, if it's a decent job, I want to retire, I want you to pay for my retirement, my medical, and all this package of things. What about these scanners at the supermarket? What do they demand of us? Well, electricity, and who knows how that's going to work. Maybe we don't even need that in the future. The point is, they work 365 days a year, no downtime, no offense, no pregnancies, no illness, no disruptions at home, none of that. And they can turn them out in a factory. Here's something you might want to know. There are hotels in Asia where they have no humans. You walk in, it's all automated, the whole deal. Restaurants in the US are increasingly moving this way. So you walk in now, you go into the restaurant, sit down on the tables, like maybe a little laptop or a pad built in, put in your order, you wait, it starts buzzing or flashing, you get up, you go get your stuff, and it's all paid for. You don't need a human being to do that. I mean, really. This is the way it's moving. These applications are coming faster and faster and faster and faster. And if you think that I can't be replaced, think about this. Let's say you have a high-level job. You're a professional. You're an accountant, lawyer, whatever, doctor. Well, I can get my accounting done. No offense to anybody, that's your career. I can get it done by somebody online who has the same knowledge base, same software, really, and they can do it for a fraction of the cost because their overheads are next to nothing, right? So the top of the middle class is getting squeezed, the bottom's getting squeezed by just simple robotics, and this thing called the middle class may in fact shrink and disappear. I think we'll always have some, but it's not going to be the great thing we had. So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do about this? Well, if you don't have a strategy, good luck. Because I don't know if you ever heard a thing called the Luddites. During the Industrial Revolution, there was this whole group of people in England that when they started putting these factories in place, had a real revolution. They had a pitchfork and torch revolution. And they were led by a guy named Ludd. I think it was Ned Ludd, okay? What happened was, they said these are, I wasn't there, but, these are the devil's work, these factories, putting people out of work and, and they had a revolution. Well, of course, the powers that be hunted them down and prosecuted them and, I don't know, maybe they hung them. Whatever they did, they snuffed that thing out. But it started to gain traction because people didn't understand there was a fundamental shift going on. Now, I'm certainly not going to encourage you to do that because that's not a winning strategy. But you want to prepare yourself to not be left behind. So what would you do? What can you do? What can you do? What are the strategies? If you've thought about this, what is your plan B? What is your option for what you've done now to this point to create wealth? Well, if you're young and ambitious, you might want to be one of those new Facebook creators or Google creators, and good luck. I mean, I really mean that, good luck. It's a bold future, and there's lots of opportunity out there. But how many of us are true entrepreneurs? How many of us have the skills and the talent and the temperament and the contacts and the resources and capital and all that stuff to be a full-blown entrepreneur? Some of us do, and it's great. But for the rest of us, that's not a real strategy. You might think, well, I'll put some music out, or I'll write a book, or I'll be a video. Great, and I applaud you and I'll support you in that. But that's a very small minority of people. What about the rest of us? What do we do? How do we approach this thing? Well, you might say, well, I play the lotto. If I hit it big, I'm done. I got the money. Well, good luck. I can't say I'll support you in that, but thank you for supporting me through your tax dollars at work. You're paying for things. You might think, well, I'll just, inherit money. Well, if that works, that's great too. But again, these are all little niche things. What are the rest of us going to do? What are you going to do? People go, well, I'll work harder. That would work, except if your job's downsizing or you're partially replaced by one of these automated technologies. Your job may not go away, but you're partially replaced. So you're only working a fraction of what you were because of the assistance of this technology. How much harder can you work? And I'm willing to bet you're already working real hard, right? What I know is the secret to wealth creation is not necessarily working hard. A big part of it's having the right vehicle. Having the right vehicle. Like the platform called Facebook or the platform called Google. They have a vehicle for wealth creation. So look for a vehicle to help create wealth. So if none of those are going to work, I'll give you a taste of what this new economy looks like. First of all, we will not have jobs as such. We won't be directed and employed and kind of channeled like that. I mean, some of that will exist. But we're largely, who are going to be the winners will be the people who can take their unique gifts and learn to monetize those. And you might go, wow, unique gifts. I can't do music. I don't want to do art. I'm not a good entrepreneur. But I say you do have a unique gift. Whatever that is. I can't say what it is for you, but every one of us has a unique gift. The challenge here is to find a way to monetize it. And you might go, well, my unique gift is I'm a great homemaker, but I don't know how to monetize that. Or I'm a great, I like my friends. I like sharing stuff with my friends, but I don't know how to monetize that. So you want to find a vehicle. Number two, you're going to need to create your own sort of brand, or you're going to be able to need to represent yourself to be able to allow that money to come to you through your vehicle. Okay? You're going to need a strategy. Number three, you're going to need a strategy that helps you leverage your time. Unless you just want to work for a fixed amount of income, if you want to be wealthy, and remember I said wealth is health, relationships, purpose, money, and time. If you want that time component, you've got to be able to leverage your time so that you have more of time for yourself. So you've got to create a way that you can uniquely access the money or have wealth flow to you, have money flow to you. And you also, if you want true wealth, if you want that time freedom, and a mentor of mine said, you can always make more money, Michael Jude, but you can't make more time, right? You can't make more time, but you can buy back the rest of your life with enough money. You can own the rest of your life if you have enough money to pay your bills and do the stuff you want to do. You can own your life. So you want to figure out how to leverage yourself and create redundant systems. Now, by redundant systems, I don't mean they're systems that disappear. I mean systems that are sticky enough, they're strong enough that they will work whether or not you show up to work. You want a robust system that will work whether you show up or not to work, so that you can show up doing something else if you choose to, right? So you might be thinking, well, this is great information, but how do I put that into action? How do I actually make this work? See, one piece I left out for me, and you may not accept this for yourself. My recipe or my constellation for true wealth is I want to make a difference in the world. I want my life to mean something. When I leave this dusty place, I want it to have been a good journey, not just for me, but for the people around me, for the people that I can impact. You see, so I'm a radar. I'm looking at what can I do that makes a difference? Because that's what gives me satisfaction. That's my purpose. So what I've surveyed what options are available. Look, if you can do Facebook, good on you. If you can inherit money, good. But what I've seen is that there are very, very, very few options for us normal people, so to speak. There are a couple places that are emerging in the new economy that didn't really exist in the old economy, right? Now, let me just put that to the side. See, these economic eras aren't like cut and dried. In 1760, the Industrial Revolution happened. It wasn't like that. There's a big build-up period, and so these things. Let me give you a little story about what happened in the 1950s. See, in the 1950s, some entrepreneurs in the USA, by chance, got together and and they looked at inefficiencies in the system. This is what you want to look for. You want to look for an inefficiency in the system. And if you can offer a solution, you can make the money that you need to become truly wealthy. Find a place in the system that isn't working fully effective and get a application, get a solution, and make it available to the world, and wealth will come to you. Some ones you might know today. So Facebook is one, right? Doesn't Facebook do something? Wasn't there an inefficiency if you wanted a big circle of friends and you had photos and you wanted to share them with people? You had to make all these prints and you had to send them around. So there was an inefficiency. They exploited it. Beautiful. How many of you have heard of something called Uber, which is an app you get that allows you, instead of calling a cab company, you go online, and instead of the cab company owning the cab and all that insurance, there's actually a private person with a car who says, yeah, I got time, I'll come pick you up and I'll take you there. And they do it cheaper, less expensive, and it's a lot of times a lot nicer car and a nicer person too, because they're just people like us having a good time. Airbnb. So by the way, Uber didn't exist 10 years ago. They're now the largest transport, like a cab company in the world. They don't own one cab, right? Airbnb, similar thing. You want to go somewhere, you don't want to stay in a hotel? Great, go online, Airbnb, app. Here's somebody who has a room in their house. They say, yeah, I'll let you stay here for this amount. Go have a great experience, probably nicer than a hotel in a lot of ways, probably a lot less expensive, so they can monetize their extra room in their house. You get a great experience. They're one of the largest accommodation companies in the world. They don't own one hotel room. So you want to start thinking, how can I do this? How can I provide a vehicle? How can I get a platform? Now, again, I'm not suggesting you'll be the next Uber and the next Airbnb, but there are vehicles you can use. Back to the story of the 1950s. So some guys got together, they spotted an inefficiency like Uber and like Airbnb. And that inefficiency was, if I have a product and at the factory it costs, let's say, $1. By the time it hits the store, it might be $4 or $5, right? Everybody knows this. Bar of soap, a box of tissues, food. By the time it hits the store and you buy it, it's $4 or $5. You're glad to pay it because there's people all along the way that provide value add, or they do services along the way. So it comes from the factory, some guy in a truck drives it somewhere, It goes to a warehouse. The warehouse sends it out to local regional warehouses, and jobbers come and sell to the store, and they stock it, and the store has a physical place, and they have rent, and they have advertising, they have employees, they have theft, they have all this stuff. And so that's why it's that price. Well, these guys in the 1950s spotted it. They said, well, wait a minute. We don't need all that. Why don't we sell direct from the factory to the consumer? Why don't we cut all that stuff out? And they said, well, we could do that, but how are people going to know about it? You know, there's a problem. But what they figured out is they could take something human beings are already doing and have done since humans have been talking, and they decided to allow that to be the vehicle for their word-of-mouth advertising, okay? So in the 1950s, they called this thing multi-level marketing. We don't call it that today, we call it network marketing. This is a vehicle where you can use all these things that I've talked about. You, without capital, without contacts, without interpersonal skill, without huge educational background, you can actually use this to monetize what you're already doing, which is if you like Thai food and you tell me about a Thai food restaurant and I go in and spend a bunch of money on Thai food, next time you come in, sorry, they're not going to treat you to a meal or anything. But in this case, if you recommend a good or a service that comes from a factory or a service provider and goes direct to the consumer, they will reward you for doing what you're already doing, which is recommending goods and services that you like. And I dare say, if you don't like it and you don't think it's good value, you wouldn't recommend it to your friends. But if you do what good friends do and you recommend this anyway, whether you're going to be thanked or not, you're going to do it. In this case, these guys figured out here's an inefficiency in the system. Like Uber and Airbnb, you got a spare room in your house? Great. Let's get a vehicle, let's get a platform and connect you. And that's what this thing called network marketing is doing. And it has absolutely exploded. Now in the 1950s and 60s, it was small, it's a nascent industry. But today, it's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars worldwide with hundreds of millions of people doing it. And people have actually created what I would define as true wealth for themselves. Again, the definition of true wealth, first of all, they're able to make money from their home instead of commuting to a city center or whatever. They're actually able to create the money. They're able to create time because what they do is they create a network. They create a distribution network, just like a chain of stores, except it's just people. And they're able to leverage that network, whether they show up or not, and have it monetized and provide them an income. They've also been able to use this vehicle to create powerful relationships, and continual education. Because continual education is one of the key things. Remember I said you have to be flexible in the new economy? Well, the flexibility comes from investing here, not necessarily in a new factory, but investing here and here, understanding how human behavior works, how interpersonal skills, how to acknowledge and be acknowledged, leadership skills, how to be a leader, how to train people to be a leader, right? All these wonderful skills. And they're also able to create for themselves purpose and passion, mostly because they love whatever company or whatever product they're representing, right? So if I love Thai food, if I might be the guy who writes the newspaper column about food, I'm a real foodie, I love it, this is a way I could monetize. But what we're talking about here is a huge consumer base that is replacing the traditional store. Have you noticed that stores, I'm not sure about in your local economy, they're harder and harder to rent, they're empty longer? Yeah, that's what's going on. This model that they created in the 1950s is now moved online, right? How many of us bought something online this week, this month, this year? Probably everybody, maybe even today. See, there will always be retail stores. There'll be niche stores. If you want to try on a pair of shoes, go to the store. Look, just here locally, I went into a store. It was a sporting goods store. And the guy said, I said, how's business? You got a great inventory. And he did. He had a stunning array of camping gear and sports gear. And he said, well, not so good. I said, really? And he was in a very popular tourist destination. He said, yeah. He said, I've got all this inventory, all my wealth's tied up in this inventory, and people come in and they try on stuff, and they go home or they go out to their car, and what do? They buy it online. He can't compete with them because of that inefficiency in the system. You see? So what this is an emerging technology that you can harness for yourself. Okay, this is just one strategy. There are other strategies, but I want to give you this, and I want to close this part of our time together down, and just encourage you to take a look. Take a look for yourself. First of all, size up what's going on. If anything I've said about what's going on makes sense, do your own research. See if the strategy that you have now is going to benefit you in the future, if it's a viable strategy that's going to grow with you and allow you true wealth in your life. And if you can say yes, then absolutely stick with that. But if you have any concerns at all, I encourage you to look at this as an alternative. Don't take my word for it. It's not just because I say it. I've extensively studied this. I've studied it for 20 years. I don't see another vehicle an average person can use to create wealth, true wealth. So take a look. Find somebody who either shared this information with you or you know that's involved in the industry, and ask them. Just say, hey, tell me about this. Talk to me. Let me know what's going on. Give me the good, give me the bad. Tell me why you're doing this. Tell me why I should consider this. And you're a rational person. You'll make up your own mind. My job here is not to convince you or sell you something. I'm sharing some information. Your job, as I see it, is to take that information and ingest it. See if it fits. If it fits and you want to do something about it, then I'll say my job is done. So again, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate your interest and your concern. I know for me, it's not just about me. Again, part of my true wealth is making a difference. It's making a difference for my family, my friends, my community, and the world at large. So I encourage you to find your path, and may life and your path in life give you all the success that you deserve.